You know, it's weird with Tong. For me, last year, I couldn't wait to see him. All the numbers, the highlights in the minor leagues. Get this guy up here. Let's see how it plays. And then you saw it at the big league level, and you clearly saw he was not ready. Tony, what's his role in 2026 on this Mets team?
Well, it's interesting you say that, Sal, because I think we're told all the time not to trust what you see in September, right? But I think in this case, given the circumstance and the gravity of those games, given that we weren't even sure in the first place if Tong was ready, I do think those starts, he had a 9.88 ERA his last 4 starts in the majors. I do think it played a role where you go into spring now and it's like, I just don't see a path for him to make the team. The Mets have quite a few veteran starters. There's 6 guys at the top of the depth chart that are probably going to be there. And so you ask me what Tong's role is. I think if all goes well, it's ace for the AAA Syracuse Mets to start out. And if he can fulfill that role and do what he did last year and really be that guy where you come in and he is dominant and proves that he is too good for that level, his goal should be to place himself above Christian Scott, above Tobias Myers. Like, those are the next guys in the depth chart where as soon as something goes wrong with the top 6 starters in the rotation, and it will, probably even in spring training, you want to position yourself to be that next guy up. So for me, I find it very hard to see a world where Tong makes the team. But I do find it quite easy to see a world where May 1st, May 15th, something goes wrong, he's up there.
Tony, it would be the best thing for Jonah Tong if he got more development time. Yep. I think you're absolutely right. Look, I believe they rushed him up last year, Sal, drunk on Nolan McClain's success. Oh, this guy's going to be great, too. And it was
also necessity.
Yeah, also necessity, too. And he was dominant. You were right. He was dominant in the minor leagues. He's probably the best pitcher in the minor leagues, across all the minor leagues last year. And that speaks well of his stuff. And we saw some glimmers from him when he did pitch in the major leagues. But he's got 30 innings, I think, above AA in his career. That's nothing. So he has some more development to do. You heard him talk there about refining his delivery a little bit. That's a constant thing with pitchers who have to repeat. So he's got to work on that part of it, too. Look, the idea of him being something that comes up in mid-season to help the team, that's perfectly fine. They've got other inventory there to deal with in the starting rotation. And that doesn't mean that Jonah Tong is bad or a lesser prospect than he was. He's still an amazing prospect who should have a really big major league career at some point. It does not have to be on the opening day roster.
The thing that I worry about with him, though, is confidence. And the only way to really have confidence is not to dominate the minors, because he's done that before. He's got to get back to the big leagues and then prove it to himself, not just us, prove it to himself that he can do it. So that's going to take, that's learning on the job at the big league level. Not so sure the Mets can get away with that outside of, like you said, injury to the rotation, which seems to happen every year to every team. Let's make the call to the bullpen. Welcome in Britt Ghiroli. Britt, which starter is the key for the Mets in their rotation in 2026?
I think Sean Manaea, guys. I mean, obviously you've got Freddie Peralta there at the top. You saw him already down at spring training getting ready. But Sean Manaea was really good in 2024. Last year, he was ineffective. He was hurt for a good chunk of the year. When he was on the mound, he wasn't good. They need to find a way to get him right. Now, having a guy like Peralta slots him down. It slots Kodai Senga down, too. There's a lot less pressure on these guys to carry the rotation. But make no mistake, the Mets are going to need guys besides Freddie Peralta to get the job done, or they're going to be in the same situation they were last year. I think Sean Manaea is poised to have a comeback. Let's keep in mind he signed that new contract to stay with the Mets because of how much he surged under them and under their pitching tutelage. So I think he's a guy that we should really watch. Can have a lot of impact beyond the Nolan McClains and the Freddie Peraltas.
Yeah, Britt, I agree with you completely. And I think it's easy to see Kodai Senga, but it's also hard for me to sit here and trust Kodai Senga. Manaea is a guy that the Mets gave big money to, hoping he would be at the top of that rotation. But when you talk about making this rotation click for 2026, for me, the guy is actually Nolan McClain, because I think we all sit here in these chairs and we assume, based on what he did in 7 starts down the stretch, that he's going to be a #1 bona fide ace, compete for the Cy Young Award, shoe-in Rookie of the Year. Like, there's no chance he doesn't win that award. That's a lot to ask a guy who's barely been, similar to Jonah Tong, who's barely pitched really in the upper minors or in AAA and above. So when I look at this rotation, if McClain struggles a little bit and hits a rough patch, which we haven't seen from him, all of a sudden the whole thing looks a little bit messier. But if he can actually be that guy and fulfill these crazy expectations that me and you have for him, then this rotation looks a lot better, especially with Peralta right there with him at the top. So to me, I don't think you can assume anything from Nolan McClain, but if he's that guy, it's super important to what the Mets are trying to do.
More on McClain coming up a little bit later on. I've kind of moved on from the thought about Framber Valdez, Britt, but do you think there's still a chance that the Mets could wind up with him?
Yeah, well, I don't want to keep throwing Chris Bassett's name out there, Sal, because everyone knows how in love with him you are. But yeah, yes, I do think that there's a chance. The longer he sits out there, the more he becomes prime for a guy like David Stearns, who really enjoys signing pitchers to short-term deals. This could be kind of what happened to Jordan Montgomery or Blake Snell a couple years ago, where they hung out there for so long. They both took one-year deals and decided they were going to retest the market. I could see Framber Valdez doing the same thing. Look, there are red flags here. There are clubhouse issues, and teams are kind of wary of bringing in a guy like that on a 6 or 7 year deal. He's not going to get that anymore. The closer and closer we get to spring training, the more the Mets could throw some money at him, take a flyer on him, and not care that he's not going to be around long term. Their main goal was to make this rotation better. It's a much better, deeper rotation, but if you add Framber Valdez, it's even better, and you could probably withstand a couple injuries as it is right now, like you guys were talking about. 1 or 2 slots go down, all of a sudden you got Jonah Tong that you're relying on. So it's not out of the realm of possibility at all for the Mets, particularly because of the payroll and the pockets that they have with ownership, to make a play on Valdez late.